Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Naomi Sleep, the Executive Director of the Florida Student Success Center. Happy to have you all joining us for our webinar on Florida Mathematics Redesign, a next step, kind of a follow-up from our kickoff meeting that happened in St. Petersburg earlier this month. Just some webinar logistics today. All participants on the webinar are muted for the duration of the webinar. You'll see your orange tab, which will allow you to expand or minimize your control panel. We do have the material from today's webinar, a PDF of our presentation, which is included in the handouts area. And if you do have questions, please submit those during the webinar utilizing the questions function, and we will address those during the Q&A portion of the webinar. We are also recording today's webinar for those participants who weren't able to join us. As I said, my name is Naomi Sleep, the Executive Director of the Florida Student Success Center, and I'm joined here by Dr. Carrie Henderson, the Executive Vice Chancellor of the Florida College System. For today's webinar, we will do a recap of our milestones 1 and 2, which we began at our kickoff meeting. Provide some guidance on milestone 3 when we think about gathering information about our challenges. Provide a review of the Canvas resources that we have made available, and then an overview of next steps for our work ahead within our three mathematics groups. So just as a recap, we are working towards mathematics redesign in Florida through 3 mathematics work groups: our high school to post-secondary alignment, exploring how high school curriculum in mathematics aligns with post-secondary expectations, our SCS Mathematics Sequences Working Group, where we're examining multiple pathways for students to enter based on programs of study, as well as the redesign of course structures to maximize supports for students, and for our students who articulate on into the state university system, our Florida College System to University Alignment, examining how our Florida College System curriculum in mathematics aligns with our university expectations. Our working groups are made up of 28 faculty and administrators per working group, representing our K-12 system, our Florida College System, and our state university system. We also have a group of members at large, which we formed because we had such great feedback about joining the mathematics redesign work. That group is made up of approximately 40 members, and they'll be engaged through newsletters and webinars and be able to provide feedback as we think about the work that you all will be doing in your work groups to collect evidence-based practices and policy recommendations around mathematics redesign in our high school to post-secondary alignment within our college system, and then our college system to university alignment. As a work group member within those 3 work groups, we have some review of our expectations, and you'll see we already checked off the box for our kickoff meeting, which was September 18th at St. Petersburg College. Happy to have them host us, and we were so excited to have you all join us and really kind of kick off our work for the year ahead. During the time of September 2018 through May of 2019, we will be engaged and have working group members participating in virtual meetings as they talk about the challenges within those working groups. In June of 2019, culminating in a one-day institute where we'll review those best practices, evidence-based best practices and policy recommendations that you all have found around the solutions to mathematics pathways in the K-12 college system and university, and then asking our work group members to engage in readings and research and other related activities as we think about those challenges within your working groups on a monthly basis. And we're estimating about 6 to 8 hours per month for your contribution as a work group member. Really excited to have the work of our work groups led by 3 work group chairs. Professor Cynthia McGinnis from Northwest Florida State College, the chair of our high school to post-secondary alignment. Dr. Julie Phelps from Valencia College, chair of our Florida College System Mathematics Sequences Work Group. And Dr. Tommy Minton from Seminole State College of Florida, the chair of our College to University Alignment Work Group. Taking a look at our work group structure, the way that we've set up the work to continue within our 3 working groups is the leadership of our work group chair. We also have staff liaisons here at the Florida College System, as well as support from the Florida Department of Education and their K-12 unit, and then our Board of Governors for the State University System, also serving as staff liaisons to support the work that you all are doing. As we thought about the challenges that were identified at our kickoff meeting in St. Petersburg, seeing that each of those challenges will be associated with a huddle where real work will happen in a much more feasible amount of individuals working on it. So we have the huddles, and then each huddle will have a huddle lead that will help kind of report the work of that huddle focused on a challenge back up to the work group chair. So we talked about the work group chair being that college faculty or administrator who provides leadership to our work groups, the staff liaisons, members from the Florida College System, the Florida Department of Education, and the State University Board of Governors, which are there to help connect the work groups with technical assistance and documents. And then the smaller working group known as the huddle, where they'll do the deeper work of gathering information about the challenges and identifying those solutions. And then the huddle lead, which we talked about, will help really coordinate the work of that smaller huddle and report back to the work group chair on the progress. When we think about the milestones of our work, we kicked off with milestone 1, which was a survey that happened before our kickoff meeting in St. Petersburg, where we asked you all from our 3 working groups, as well as members of at-large, to define the challenges in establishing mathematics pathways and mathematics redesign in Florida across the education system, so between K-12 to the college system to the state university system, administering that key to identify challenges and synthesize some of the findings across implementing that. Milestone 2, when we gathered in St. Petersburg for the kickoff meeting, we took a look at those challenges that were shared in the milestone 1 survey and prioritized those to say which ones will we be working on as we think about our work ahead, assigning members to huddles, which are our smaller working groups. And then our time today on the webinar is really introducing you to the next steps after milestone 2, where we prioritize those challenges, but thinking about what factors are contributing to those challenges that we identified, the evidence and the drivers or the root causes of those challenges. So we're calling this milestone gathering information, and we're looking for a deadline around November of 2018 to have that information gathered as we think about those challenges in our huddle. Looking forward for our work ahead in milestone 4 of linking challenges and solutions, looking around January of 2019, where we'll brainstorm and evaluate potential solutions to those challenges that were previously identified. And then milestone 5 in February of 2019, really prioritizing those solutions, proposing and prioritizing formal recommendations as we think about milestone 6, where we'll gather those policy recommendations and evidence-based practices around mathematics redesign. Thinking of a milestone of April 2019 so that we can gather that information as we think about gathering for a formal convening in June of 2019 for a one-day institute on those identified policies and best practices. So a recap of milestones 1 and 2 again. We think about our pre-survey of milestone 1 that went out before our kickoff meeting at St. Petersburg College, where we asked individuals from the 3 working groups and the at-large to identify what challenges surfaced as we think about implementing mathematics redesign in Florida. We take a look at the diagram, we'll see that in the high school area, some challenges that were identified that were unique to implementing mathematics pathways from high school to the post-secondary, thinking about district discretion in offerings, student motivation, and unpreparedness for college success, which is unique to the high school working group. When we think about the Florida College System, we think about scheduling and adjunct faculty as challenges. And between the high school to the Florida College System, you'll see the shared experience and identification of the challenge of college placement for those students coming in between high schools to post-secondary. When we take a look at the state university system, the feedback about challenges with implementing was thinking about potential grade inflation and the impacts of that for professors and students, pressure sometimes for faculty to pass students, large class sizes as opposed to maybe their previous post-secondary experiences, and then looking at the issue of excess credit hour. But then you'll see there's a lot of shared similarities and challenges that were identified across those three areas of high school to post-secondary and the state university system. Thinking about the communication internally within our systems, taking a look at our prerequisites that are uncommon, taking a look at advising and placement, ambiguity in some of our sequencing, some student indecision regarding whether or not they want to pursue post-secondary education or their intended program of study, misalignment and miscommunication between systems, between high school to post-secondary and colleges into the universities, no algebra alternatives, one-size-fits-all pedagogy, and then a lack of fundamental understanding of math. So some shared challenges that were identified in our milestone 1. Milestone 2, prioritizing the challenges. Our high school to post-secondary alignment work group gathered in St. Petersburg and prioritized the following challenges for their high school to post-secondary working group. So content alignment from elementary to college, professional development for math teachers, advising students into math sequences and career paths, improving fundamental math skills and concepts, and assessment of students. Our Florida College System Mathematics Sequences Work Group identified the following challenges of priority: foundation preparedness around mathematics, multiple sequences and pathways for mathematics, ambiguity of math sequencing resulting in content overlap, placement, advising misplacement, and single measure of college readiness, and revisiting the prerequisites for commonality. And then our Florida College System to University Alignment Work Group identified the challenges of communication about desired math outcomes for degree programs, alignment of course content, advising of math pathways, and aligning prerequisites for courses between institutions. At this time, I'd like to introduce the chair of our high school to post-secondary alignment working group, Professor Cynthia McInnes, to kind of review the huddles that were identified based on those challenges from our kickoff meeting. Cynthia, go ahead and share with us.
Okay, thank you. It took me, I had some trouble getting on here. I'm using my cell phone. So here we go. Could you give me a lead in, because I just got in. So you want me to go over the next couple slides?
Please, Cynthia, if we could just share with the webinar folks a little bit about the huddles and the challenges that were identified at our kickoff meeting.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. So huddle 1, we went to look at content alignment from early elementary to college, but more high school to college. We did have some discussion that really learning math starts in elementary school, but I think we want to focus more on high school into college. We also were looking at professional development for math teachers. What kind of professional development do they involve themselves in? Are they working towards mathematical mindsets and that sort of thing that can help prepare students for college level math or whatever pathway that they're going through? Huddle 3 is advising students into math sequences and career paths. So I think this is pretty important. Well, they're all important, but Huddle 3 is advising students. Some students are going to naturally be able to excel in a college environment. And I think some students have a career path that is more technical oriented, and I believe the career futures are just as bright there. Huddle 4 was improving fundamental math skills and concepts. So I think a lot of times students know the memorization of the math skills, but they don't actually understand simple things like factoring, why it works, and those type of math concepts. Assessment of students. So how are we assessing them? What are they actually learning? And what can they give us from that in higher order thinking skills? Let's see.
Thanks, Cynthia. Right now, what we're showing is a little bit about the huddle assignments. So, Cynthia, if you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about some of your leads and then some of your members for those 5 important challenge huddles.
Okay, so our huddle assignments in the high school, we have Donna DeSena is our huddle lead there. Our huddle members are Courtney Starling, Al Grocia, Hadley Pridgeon, Chris Demarius, Theo Kalopoulos, Carrie Siller, and I already mentioned Donna DeSena. Huddle 2, professional development for math teachers. We have Virginia Hayes and Joey B. Davis, and then our huddle members there are Mark Valeris, Virginia Hayes, Joey Davis, and Dr. Kathy Nobles. Advising students in the math sequence and career paths, we have Janet Stevenson, Nikki, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, Donego, Pam Weeks, Lindley Page, Stephen Bellanoy, Tanai Chan, and Douglas Wendell. In Huddle 4, we have improving fundamental math skills and concepts. We have Diana Rimsler, Cassie Palais, Jerry Howard, Joseph Pick, Louise Bousserdette, Kim Wellner, and Louise Wolf. And for Huddle 5, Huddle lead is Gerald Chamberlain, and our Huddle members there are Lisa Greenberg, Davida Austin, Travis Barton, and Gabby Booth.
Great. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for sharing that. For members on the webinar that are part of the high school to post-secondary work group, if you did not see your name identified for a huddle, there will be an opportunity, and we'll be sharing that about next steps to make sure that you can engage in the work and be in touch with your chair, Cynthia, to make sure that you can be identified a huddle as well. I'm sorry, assigned to a huddle. So next, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Julie Phelps, the chair of the Florida College System Mathematics Sequences Work Group, to review the huddles established for the SCS mathematics sequences.
Hi, everyone. So I am going to just go through what all of these mean, because one of the common things that I think is the definition. When we say things, what do they mean exactly? So I have to say that at the session face-to-face, I'm so proud of the first group. They renamed their huddle the Foundation Preparedness. It was kind of the underprepared and lack of understanding for fundamental math concepts. And we were basically saying, what are they coming in with? We've got to figure out how to give them the foundation that's necessary for them to be successful in the college courses, whatever pathway they're going into. So that's huddle number 1. Huddle number 2, we had quite a few topics that came out of the surveys that were given, and the indecision about post-secondary or program of study major, no alternatives to college algebra, one-size-fits-all approach, resistance to multiple sequences and pathways, and schedule and offerings, all were about the multiple sequences and pathways. I will say, too, that huddle number 2 has actually been surveying each other already, and I think they may have even settled in on their first challenge. So I will kudos to that group for meeting even with the hurricane happening there in Tallahassee. So amazing work there. Then we have the next huddle, which is huddle group 3, ambiguity of math sequencing resulting in content overlap. I have to say that we saw that as quite a few different things. We separated placement out. Somebody had said placement was a part of that. So we separated that into its own huddle, but it really did come from the survey that was given about how we kind of had identity crises across the state about what each pathway looked like. Some colleges only had 2 pathways, some colleges had 3 pathways, but ultimately we needed to have a better understanding of where they were going. Then we also had, the ambiguity of math sequencing in the content. There's so much overlap too that I mixed the 2 together. I apologize. The next one was the placement and advising. We talked about single measures of college readiness. There's quite a lot in that one as well. We just realize that some of us are not really understanding necessarily some of the rules. Some advisors and counselors aren't. And again, it's about vocabulary. So we want to research that across the state. And we want to keep in mind those overarching questions for our group as we do this. And then the last one was revisiting the prerequisites for commonality. You'll notice that some of these have overlap between the different groups that we're talking about. So again, as was mentioned earlier, we do want to make sure each team is paying attention to, each huddle is paying attention to their specific area so that we are focused and can come back and revisit any overlaps between what the different huddles have come up with. But the prerequisites was, we need to figure out what everybody means when they talk about prerequisites, because there's this theory that not everybody means the same thing across the state. So we wanted to really look at that in more depth. On to the next one about who the leads are. I am so sorry that I did not, get in touch with each one of you and ask you to phonetically say your name. So I'm not going to butcher. Do you guys mind if I just say first names? So Joanne and Catherine are going to lead the first huddle, and one of them wants to do a lot of the writing. The other one is going to be kind of like the secretary, and the other one is going to be the contact person, getting everybody in touch with one another. And on that team is Kelly and Carrie, Robert, and Rashid. And then we have Angelina, and she's been getting a bunch of the huddle group together and has already surveyed them. Like I said, it was impressive. Wendy, Megan, Irma, Lourdes, and Thomas, which, by the way, I do know some of them are in class right now. I did get a message saying that they would be in class and wanted to make sure this was recorded. So I'm calling you out. So thanks for letting us know that you're in class, and we will make sure that you hear this. And then we had Huddle 3, which is Christine, and Kalinda, Don, Kim, and Paul. You are on that team. And then we have placement. That would be Matthew Fath is leading that, and Ryan, Jimmy, and Bobby are on that team. And then Huddle 5 is the prerequisite for commonality. That would be Karen is leading that. And Lee, Brad, and Sybil, thank you for being a part of that team as well. And I look forward to getting in touch with you guys soon and talking a little bit more about where we're going from here.
Great. Thank you so much, Julie. And as we indicated for the Florida College System Mathematics Sequences Workgroup, if you didn't see your name on any of the huddles, there will be an opportunity that we'll share in just a moment about how you can get in contact with your chair, Dr. Julie Phelps, and make sure that you can be assigned one of those huddles. So next, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Tommy Minton at Seminole State College of Florida, the chair of our College to University Alignment Workgroup, to kind of review the huddles and challenges that were identified in the College to University Alignment.
All right, thank you, Naomi. As you can see with ours, there's a lot of overlap between what we identified and what the other two groups did, which was kind of obvious from the survey. Except our huddle number 1 is probably going to be our big one, communication about desired math outcomes for degree programs. One of the things with the college university alignment we were looking at was bringing the university colleagues into the fold and looking at the 4-year degree programs. What really, not just from a prerequisite course issue, but really from a outcomes issue, objectives, topics type of conversation, what is it that they're expecting or needing their students to know coming out of the math courses and of the math sequencing? So this is identified as kind of our major huddle. This will probably be a longer term project than just the 1 year. What we're trying to get going in this first year is probably a foundation of what it is we want to go, start looking at some of the obvious majors like the business and the nursing and some of the other ones there, the larger ones, or even the ones that we have baccalaureate programs at the FCS institutions and can start looking at them, again, not from a course perspective, but from an outcome perspective of, what is it they really want their students to know. Huddle 2 is very similar to, in Julie's group, the content overlap, so the alignment of course content. And again, looking in kind of the algebra sequence, intermediate algebra, college algebra, pre-calculus to calculus, do we have the topics in the right places? Do we have the right objectives? If there's overlap, can we maybe remove some of that overlap? And again, our work will be similar to what the other group is doing, but we'll bring again the universities into the fold to make sure that they're offering the same courses. Are their content also aligning with ours? Huddle 3 was looking at, again, advising of math pathways. Overlap within to the other two groups of looking at the different options that are out there. But again, bringing the universities into the fold so that they're aware of what we're doing, at the FCS level of doing these different STEM, non-STEM pathways, but just to try to make sure that, are they accepting those courses? Are they have similar pathways for their students? How is their gen ed aligning it? And then 4, the prerequisite alignment, again, like Julie mentioned, what are the prerequisites in different areas? Some courses have a certain prereq at, 5 or 6 of the institutions. The other institutions have a different prereq on it. So maybe try to get that understood of what all the different institutions are doing to try to see if we can all align to common single prerequisites and, remove some of that ambiguity. Let's look at the next slide. So our assignments. We've still got some people we've added some people this last week, so we're still trying to look for some last ones to fill in the spots. I mean, for our group, because some of our university colleagues were added very last minute, they really weren't kind of fully aware of what's going on, so hopefully they're on the webinar today, and those I haven't been able to contact personally. Again, our Huddle 1, communication about desired math outcomes, I really have to hand it to Dr. Dorman, who immediately jumped on this one, wanting to take over. Something that UCF's been doing already with the curriculum alignment. And we've got Bonnie, Gail, Adam, Amy, and Robert already jumped in to be members of that one. Alignment of course content, Nydia at the initial meeting volunteered to be lead. Harrison, Dahlia, Burko, Carol, Maria, and Connie. So we've got a pretty good group there. Huddle 3, we've been having some questions about the advising of math pathways. There hasn't been, as you can see, a lot of big interest. People are jumping on this huddle. And we're kind of wondering about if we're even going to keep this one. I've already talked to Penelope and Pascal about this. Nydia has volunteered to move over if we want to keep it. So I'm going to get in touch with everybody again just to kind of make sure, is this one kind of being handled by the other two groups enough that we don't need it so we can focus on the other 3, or what we need to do? If we do keep it, we will obviously have to get a lead for that group. We've got quite a few members in the last group, as you can see, Misty, Agatha, Althea, Daniela, and Pedro. But I do need somebody to step up to be the volunteer lead. I hate to volunteer anybody myself. So hopefully after today, if one of you can jump in and say that one. This one may be a little bit off. I know Renee just emailed me just now. I think I added him to one of the other pages and documents, but with the Florida College system being closed last week with the hurricane, I don't know if you guys got that update. So I'll make sure, Renee, that you are on the list. I'm pretty sure I got your name in one place correctly. We'll verify that. But anybody else, like Naomi said, that hasn't already been assigned or definitely get a lead out of the Huddle 4, please let me know on that. I think that's it.
Great. Thank you so much, Tommy, for sharing those huddle assignments for the college to university. And as Cynthia and Julie and Tommy indicated, if you do not, or you did not see your name identified to a huddle, or perhaps you'd like to switch huddles, or you see yourself wanting to volunteer to serve as a huddle lead, if you'll make sure that you contact your workgroup chair, and their contact information is available in Canvas, and you can message them through the message board area that had some information about huddles, and or via their email, just to let them know about getting yourself assigned to a huddle, perhaps indicating your desire to switch to another huddle, or if you'd like to serve as a huddle lead as well. So thank you all so much. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Carrie Henderson to talk about milestone 3, where we'll begin to gather information about those challenges that have been identified within our huddles.
Yes, thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. I hope all is well. I know our colleagues in the Panhandle are still going through hurricane recovery, and we stand at the ready to help them. And so just know, if you or your colleagues were impacted by the storm, you are definitely in our thoughts as we look to rebuild over the next year. What has been covered this morning is sort of a reflection on where we've been, and so now I'd like to switch gears and talk a little bit about where we're going. And so just a reminder for folks, if you have questions along the way, be sure to input them through the question box, and we will try to respond to all of those. And for those who have to hop off of the webinar, this will be recorded and emailed after the fact. So making sure that you all know this information will be available. And so in terms of immediate next steps, we've completed milestones 1 and 2, and so now we're moving on to milestone 3. And the purpose of this milestone is for huddles to define the challenges that are associated with the problems that have been previously identified around mathematics pathways, and particular the ones that were identified by the huddles. This template that we have adapted from a University of Texas Dana Center template is designed to engage all of the work groups and all of the huddles in a discussion and organize the information that will be gathered by the huddle leads and then ultimately presented to the work groups. And so we would hope that this information would be completed sometime in the fall term. We're tentatively looking at a November deadline. And in terms of instructions for this, huddles should begin working together to complete the template for gathering information, and that's a document I'll share with you in a moment. Huddle leads should share the completed template and the work group chair for feedback, and so huddle leads should really start engaging with the different members of the huddles and identifying what the challenges may be, and work on completing that template. And then we would be looking to schedule a webinar in November, December, before we go on the holiday break, where all of the huddles would have an opportunity to share with each other and with other members of the work group all of the challenges that were clearly defined. And so right now is where we were going to break out into small working groups, but we do want to have that opportunity for feedback along the way. So in terms of how to access milestone 3 template, if you log into your Canvas site and you click on the module pane, under the first tab is Overview and Resources, and you would just click on Toolkit for Mathematics Workgroups. And once you do that, you'll be brought to the page on Canvas that provides an overview of the Toolkit for Mathematics Workgroups. If you click on the link above the Toolkit for Math Workgroups that's in the top paragraph, that's going to be a PDF of all of the different templates. And so if you'd like to see how the work is going to scaffold over the next several months, that's a good resource to see it in big picture. But below, we've broken it down by different milestones, activities, descriptions, files, and recommended completion dates. And so if you scroll down when you're on that Canvas page, you get to milestone 3, which is gathering information. We've provided 3 documents for your use there. First is the instructions for completing the template. The second document is the actual template that we'd like you to complete. And then the third is an example. And so we know, particularly as we're beginning this work, it's really good to be able to reflect on other states and what they've done as a marker for how we might go about organizing the work. So all of these resources are currently on Canvas for your use. They're all Word documents, so you should be able to download them and edit them at your leisure. What we've done here is provide an overview of the template for gathering information. And so essentially within the Huddle 1 challenge, in that top row, you would enter whatever your challenge identified. If it's advising for mathematics pathways, if it's common prerequisites, that's where you would enter that information. And then what you'll do in the subsequent rows is input factors that contribute to the challenge, evidence that this factor contributes to the challenge. Is there empirical evidence? Is it anecdotal? Starting to think about what data may be available. Identifying the drivers or the root causes of the factor, so what's contributing to this factor. And then what additional information do you need to answer this question or to figure out a solution? Eventually, we will shift gears from identifying challenges to beginning to identify solutions. And so we know to do that, you probably have data and information that you'd like available. And so this is the opportunity for each of the huddles to identify what data are needed, what research is needed to help move this forward. And so this is a place for that. We also include a process check, which asks each huddle to consider if the factors identified above were resolved, would the overall challenge be eliminated, why or why not? And so really, even though we're gathering information in this phase, we're trying to think about what are things that we could impact and where are areas where we could see significant improvements over the long term. And then additional information. So each huddle is going to be different, and so this allows a place for the huddles to customize and identify what additional information that they might be needed. So here on the screen, we've identified an example of a completed template. This was identified by the University of Texas Dana Center. In no way do we say or endorse necessarily the different information that you'll find here. It's just for illustrative purposes. But you can see the Huddle 1 challenge that's identified in this example is a problem with transfer and applicability of math courses. The first factor is that math requirements for programs differ from institution to institution. The evidence in this example was anecdotal evidence from group members. The group members identified that lack of communication between institutions and discipline faculty, as well as concerns about rigor for courses other than college algebra, contributed or were root causes of the factor. And then you can see here they identified additional information they needed, specifically to gather information about math requirements across institutions, and that might be part of a larger task force if that can't be done quickly. In this example, factor 2 is that students go into college algebra even when quantitative reasoning or statistics is accepted for their program. In this example, the evidence is that state data show that a high percentage of students in liberal arts programs take college algebra. The drivers or the root causes in this example are that advisors see college algebra as the safe bet, and that students self-advise and take algebra because it's something that's familiar to them. And so in this example, group members wanted to talk to advisors at their colleges to better understand how advisors make decisions and encourage students to make decisions about which mathematics courses to take. So that is the overview of the template that we would look to have completed sometime in November. We did get a question from Maria, and the question was, is each individual supposed to finish a template and then we come together as a group? Maria, that really is up to the huddle lead and the workgroup chair. I think our intention was that each huddle would complete one template, that it wasn't necessarily something that each individual would have to do, but rather the huddle lead would work with their huddle members to complete the template. But certainly the individuals would have the opportunity to provide feedback and contribute to completing the template. And so that's something, when we follow up, we will make sure that we ask our workgroup chairs and our huddle leads to determine how they best might want to go about collecting this information. But that's not something we necessarily want to prescribe at the outset. We also got a comment around using the term common prerequisites. And so we will be sure to, as we define further the work of the work groups, make sure that we have a common definitions of terms. That is something that we've encountered a lot. And I know that Julie has mentioned it on a few occasions that we're saying the same words, but they may not mean the same thing to the same people. So very good point. So right now, what I'd like to do is switch gears and just provide a brief overview of Canvas. Most of you have been able to log in. However, there are about 20 or 30 folks who have not yet been able to log in. And so if you have not received an invitation or the invitation has been lost in the ether, feel free to contact me or Naomi and we will resend that invitation to you. Check your spam folders and that sort of thing. If you've accepted the invitation but can't remember the URL or don't remember your password, the Florida Virtual Campus is the place to go, and we will direct you onto how to get those questions answered. And so what we'd like to do, though, is start utilizing this Canvas site a little more to assist with the resources and that sort of thing. Many of you probably are more familiar with Canvas, so I'm not going to spend too much time here, but I did want to share with you on the landing page when you log in, what you'll see is the site navigation. And so if you're wondering where you go for different information, this navigation table is designed to help you navigate the Canvas site. Announcements, modules, discussions, people, and calendar are the different features that we have. The most, I would say, important piece of the Canvas side is definitely the modules, and that's what we're going to talk a little bit about. We also, at the bottom of the homepage, have the chair contact information, the workgroup participants, and so that's an Excel file that anybody can download, and it includes all of the workgroup members as well as staff liaisons. And so as the huddles are conducting their work and you come across a data request, you're able to access the staff members within the Department of Education, the Office of the Board of Governors, or K-12 public schools to assist. If you're in the site and you're having technical support, the Florida Virtual Campus, who's our partner that helped create this site, is the place to go. And then any general questions that you have about the mathematics workgroups can go to Naomi. So I'd like to take a moment just to share with you the modules pane. And so the way that this is organized is each work group has their own module that's specific to their work group, but at the top of the page, we do have a section on overview and resources. And so here you'll find the membership list, and we make sure to keep that up to date as people come in, and also work groups, and we add staff liaisons, that sort of thing. We have a copy of the charter that you should all be familiar with. The toolkit of mathematics work groups I already mentioned earlier and provided some screenshots. But this is really going to be the hub of where you get information to guide the work over the next several years. So I encourage you to spend a little time just reviewing. I think I said several years. I meant several months. I hope this doesn't take several years. But I would encourage you to get familiar with this toolkit. It's going to be a really good resource in how we go about collecting and documenting all of the great work that you all are doing. We do have a discussion board that the staff liaisons will monitor. So if you have any logistical questions, that's a good place for them. On the materials for kickoff meeting, we've provided all of the information from the kickoff meeting. You may recall if you attended face-to-face, we were very fortunate to have the collaborative labs at St. Petersburg College document our conversation as we were going. And here what you see is sort of the finished product of it, which is the 2020 vision for math success in Florida across the K-20 system. And so this shows obviously a visual representation of pathways and highlights some of the key points as we think about the work that we're engaging on. And then over here in the top right-hand corner, you can see the different magazine headlines that we came up with by each work group of what the work will look like. So that's really something that I think captures the work very, very well. In addition, we also have all of the materials that we provided at the kickoff meeting. Many of you have USB drives, and some of this is duplicated, and then some of this is a little more lengthier than we provided. So we would encourage you to peruse at your leisure if you'd like to reflect on the conversation that happened at the kickoff meeting. And then policy and research resources. And so this is a really important tool that we want to make sure that you have access to. And so over the summer, as we were preparing for this work, Florida College System and staff across the Department of Education spent some time curating these resources for you. By no means are any of these exhaustive, but what we wanted to do was give everybody a set of data and information and literature related to secondary and post-secondary mathematics. So at least you would have something to reflect on. I know as we continue to do the work more and more, especially as we think about the connection from high school to college to university, understanding what happens at the secondary level was something that might be useful for the folks who aren't as familiar with high school requirements. And so the first download is a literature review and an introduction to some Florida key data. And so this is intended for all of the work groups to talk about some national math redesign initiatives and select policy and research papers. And we also provided some additional data and information specific to Florida, and would encourage you to explore that resource as well. The second tool is the guide to Florida's policies related to secondary and post-secondary mathematics. And so this includes information around statutes and rules and what resources are available around policy, curriculum, articulation, and advising. And so particularly if you're trying to better understand the policy landscape, this is an excellent resource to do so. We also conducted a state policy research at the secondary level that provides a synopsis of recent state policies related to high school math pathways, as well as graduation requirements in STEM. So this gives you a sense of nationally what's happening at the secondary level. And then the last document is what's happening at the post-secondary level. So around placement, developmental education, co-requisite delivery, and alignment of math courses with programs of study. And so again, would encourage you to explore these resources. These are by all means working documents and something that we hope to keep up to date, but they definitely serve as a good starting point and a good discussion point as you engage in your work. Moving back to the overall module pane, once you move past the overview and resources, you then move into the different work groups. And so there's a set of resources for high school to post-secondary alignment. There's one for FCS math sequences, and there's one for college to university alignment. And so within each of these, we provide chair and staff contact information, and so how you can get in touch with folks who can assist you and support you along the way. We provide an overview of information around the work group. And so this is a little bit of the charter that all of you may be familiar with, but it also provides a little bit of guidance as to what the work groups may consider. By no means is this exhaustive, but that information is provided for you. Discussion boards are also set up for each of the working groups, and as you engage in your work, your chairs can also set up unique discussion boards if you have particular items you want to talk about as a group. We will be storing information around meeting minutes and notes in the meeting information section of each portion. Resources, I do want to take a second to show you the resources that are available. Again, these are not necessarily exhaustive, but they're resources that the Department of Education provided to give different groups information and data and policy related to the work that they will be embarking on. And so each of these is specific to the work group, but all of these resources are available to all members. And so feel free, if you're in the high school group, to look in the college and the university group, because there's really good information there as well. So in this particular instance, the high school group, our partners in K-12 public schools and curriculum put together high school to post-secondary course crosswalks. And so these actually look at learning outcomes at the college level using the statewide course numbering system for MAC 1105, MAT 1033, MGF 1106, 1107, and Statistics 2020, and actually maps them to different high school mathematics courses. And so that's really useful, and I would definitely encourage the high school group to look at that as well. We also provided a link to 2 different studies that were conducted by the Center for Post-Secondary Success that related to high school to post-secondary alignment. So that's information that's available for all of the work group members. I'm not going to spend too much time going over the same information because it is consistent. And then the last piece within each of the work group modules is a place for collaboration. And so we know that we want the ability to work synchronously. And so we provided a link to a Google Drive folder where different work group members can work on documents together. And so hopefully these resources will be useful for you as you embark on your work. Also within the people section, we're making sure to let you know that there are groups that are set up within the different work groups, and so you can see based on the different work group members as well as the different huddles we're creating. So as the huddles are finalized and as the work groups are finalized, we'll make sure to keep this information updated, but wanted to make sure that you all knew that this resource was available to you. And then lastly, the discussions page. We've started to use these with some of the huddle assignments, and then as the work continues and as you engage in the work, these are available for your resources as well. As we're nearing the end of the presentation, be sure to input any questions that you have within the question pane. We will be, as I said, sending this information out to all of the work group members who were here and those who weren't able to make it, so that they can see a copy of the webinar in addition to all of the documents that we've talked about. In terms of next steps, though, huddlees, you should connect with your workgroup chairs about completing the milestone template. Having that conversation, as Maria asked earlier, about how this work will take place. Is each individual completing the template? Is this something that's completed at the huddle level? Huddlees, we're really looking for your leadership there to work with workgroup chairs in defining what the actual work and collaboration will look like. So huddlees will take the lead there. And then we encourage all participants to review all of the modules in Canvas. I highlighted them for you today, but we would definitely want you to do a deeper dive because questions that you might have or data that you might want may already be there as well. So definitely look through the overview and resources module, particularly the policy and research resources that I highlighted, as well as become familiar with your particular work group and the resources that are available there. Like we said, we want to make sure that we're providing all the information that we can, and if we don't have the information available, know that the staff liaisons within the department are here to assist with that. And then lastly, Huddle should begin working on milestone 3. That's really what the work is about, is to turn it over to you now. You all are the experts in this area, and we are really just excited about the partnership that's taking place and the work and the ideas that you will generate over these next several months. And so looking forward at this point to turning our leadership over to Huddle leads and workgroup chairs. And we will plan on connecting with this larger group, again, once milestone 3 is complete in November or December. But right now it's really up to y'all. And so really looking forward to the work groups beginning the work. So we have just a few minutes, and I will pause to see and allow folks time to have any questions. All right, seeing none, we will close the webinar. If you do have questions, though, feel free to contact your workgroup chair or me or Naomi. Like I said, we're just really excited about this work, enthusiastic about all of the positive energy and efforts around it, and really appreciate your level of engagement during this work. And so we will be sure to follow up with this webinar via recording, and then indicate the specific next steps that all of the huddles should follow as they complete milestone 3. So until next time, have a great day. Thank you, everyone.